Good morning and welcome back to Rising. I'm excited to be here today with Shermichael Singleton, who is filling in for Amber Athey. Shermichael, it's nice to see you.
It is nice to see you, Jess. Thanks so much for having me. So tell us what we're about to hear today.
So we'll discuss the historic shutdown of Hollywood following the actors union's decision to the striking film, television, and writers. And Tucker Carlson is launching his own media company. We will weigh in on that as well.
All right, but first, lawyers for Hunter Biden have sent cease and desist letters to Donald Trump, alleging the presidential candidate's statements could lead to harm or injury for Hunter Biden's family. According to reporting by ABC News, the cease and desist order says, in part, we're just one social media message away from another incident. Mr. Trump's words have caused harm in the past and threaten to do so again if he does not stop.
Earlier this week, Donald Trump took to Truth Social and slammed prosecutors for their deal with Hunter Biden on tax charges, saying, in part, Weiss is a coward. He gave out a traffic ticket instead of a death sentence. Hunter Biden pled guilty to 2 counts of willful failure to pay taxes as part of the deal. He agreed to be charged, but not prosecuted for purchasing a handgun during the time he was using drugs. Biden also paid out more than $200,000 in taxes. The deal infuriated Republicans who alleged the president's son received special treatment. The DOJ is pushing back on those claims, saying the U.S. attorney had complete control over the case. So this has devolved into quite a mess, and it turns out that no one's happy, which is an unsurprising result. Shermichael, what do you make of it all?
I mean, look, I have to tell you, as someone with a ton of firearms, I own a production company that specializes in action-oriented and firearms-related content. And I can tell you, if a regular person, Jess, did what Hunter Biden did, they would be facing at least 3 to 5 years in federal prison. The only reason the president's son isn't going to prison is because he's the president's son. And I don't think anyone has to guess about that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I would say this is nothing new. And I think a lot of folks, on the right now are quite upset, saying this is something that's exclusive to Democrats or exclusive to the Biden family. But in the United States for quite some time, any powerful family with ties to multinational corporations or otherwise is pretty much protected when it comes to facing any kind of accountability for actions that other citizens in the United States that are not members of powerful or elite families would be persecuted for, would face the maximum sentence for. And so it feels like nothing new, but it does feel like there's a bit of a fire under Republicans right now. And I would like to see some kind of precedent set to prevent this kind of corruption from happening in our justice system in the future across the board. And I'm not sure that that's a likely outcome of this, because it seems to me that they're just happy the Biden family is facing some kind of accountability here.
I mean, look, Jess, let's think about this scenario. If it were Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Ivanka Trump, the mainstream media conglomerates would have a field day persecuting Trump, going after Republicans, saying this is why you have to get rid of them from the White House. You have to get rid of them from power because there was a consistent pattern, right, of questionable ethical behavior, questionable legal behavior. But it's Hunter Biden. So we're going to sweep it under the rug. We're going to ignore it. We're going to ignore him driving 170 plus miles an hour in his Porsche with a crack pipe in his hand. We're going to ignore all of those things because he happens to be the son of the president that we like. The hypocrisy in that is why so many Americans don't trust the mainstream media on the left or the right, because they believe that they're more interested in peddling a narrative that they want versus telling the American people the truth. And that's a problem.
Yeah, I think the only major difference between the Trump family and the Biden family is that we had Ivanka as an advisor to the president. We had Jared Kushner in a cabinet position, and even Eric Trump being involved, and so Don Jr. as well. You had a lot of the children actually deeply involved in the administration in a way that Hunter Biden is not. However, I would like to see similar accountability for Jared Kushner's dealing with Saudi families, Saudi royalty, Saudi corporations. If we're going to hold Hunter Biden accountable, I think we should absolutely be holding the Trumps accountable as well. But the mainstream media's failure to report on corruption as a whole and what the elite families in the United States are doing, I think is really telling. And I think it is absolutely what sows distrust in not only mainstream media, but the FBI and the DOJ as well. Their inability to hold people who are powerful accountable, I think, means people will trust our Department of Justice a lot less. I think it's why a lot of people are not trustworthy of the FBI or don't see the FBI as a trustworthy entity, given that they didn't investigate a lot of the whistleblower complaints when it came to the Biden family's dealings with Burisma. And so all of these things, I think, are exactly what sows mistrust in our media and our politics. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that leads them to think, well, we haven't been held accountable in the past. The public doesn't trust us anyway, so we might as well continue business as usual.
I mean, look, we are pawns in their game, and they're pulling the strings. And I think about the quote from the comedian George Carlin, who's no longer with us, and he said, if it's the American dream because you'd have to be asleep to actually believe it. And I think for so many Americans, that quote, as cynical and comical as it may have been, there's a lot of truth into what he said. And I think when you look at whether it's Hunter Biden or the children of the former president, Donald Trump, a lot of people do ask themselves, if I were in this position, or if my kids did something similar, or if I did something similar, would I have the same level of justice as these individuals who belong to the wealthiest and most powerful in our country? And the honest answer to that question is no. And so I agree with you in terms of having some level of consistency in terms of how we pursue justice. But I have to say this, Hunter Biden, and we know this from the whistleblower reports, have made tons of money from his father when he was vice president, and more than likely is still making money today while his father's president. Where is the media's attention on that? Why aren't they focusing on that? You brought up Jared Kushner. There have been so much focus, Jess, on Jared Kushner, so much focus on Ivanka. Again, with Hunter Biden, you do not see that same level of consistency.
Right. I think what I'm interested in is you have Republicans like James Comer and Chuck Grassley saying a lot about what was exposed in the House Oversight Committee, which, the Democrats on that committee said that they didn't want all of the documents to be public, and that's fine. But it allowed Chuck Grassley to go on television every night and speak in anything but absolutes, to say that it's very likely we're seeing this. We see something along the lines of this, and not really making clear that there's any concrete evidence that Hunter Biden did in fact get those $5 million payments from Burisma. And so it put people in this situation where any outcome of what the case would be, what he pled guilty to, and what the deal would ultimately be, it's going to seem like a lot less when you have someone like Chuck Grassley on mainstream television basically saying they have a smoking gun, and then ultimately this is a deal that's made with lawyers when it comes to the Hunter Biden case. And so the way all of that played out, I think, was really unfavorable for the Biden family and Democrats. I think in the interest of democracy, they should have made very clear that this is going to go down in a similar way to other corruption cases have gone down when you've had Congress investigate, which is we'll disclose everything that we have at the end of the case, and we're not saying anything until then. Chuck Grassley going on mainstream media and hinting at what they found evidence-wise, I think made this a bigger mess than it needed to be.
I mean, look, that's a fair point, but I got to tell you this. Wesley Snipes, Jess, wishes his father was Joe Biden. So, Jess, what about Trump's statements on their face you believe Hunter Biden is saying that are so dangerous? I mean, what do you think? Because he's going after Trump. You have his lawyers tweeting or filing a cease and desist, but this guy's a presidential candidate. So what do they expect here?
I couldn't speak to what they expect here. I think the Trump family being outraged about the Biden case is kind of rich. It's kind of throwing stones in glass houses. I think Trump has honestly gotten off easy. I think Merrick Garland could have prosecuted him and pressed charges, day one in office for Trump inciting an insurrection. So I would like to see, justice applied to any family that uses their power in a way that is bad for the American people. But that's not the DOJ that we have, and it goes both ways. And so when I think about the Biden family and what's going down here, yeah, I think Hunter Biden absolutely needs to be further investigated. And we actually need some real justice brought about here for the corruption with Burisma. But I think what's going on is they've said that they've found the ties and they've been able to follow that money, but I don't think they really have, as much as Chuck Grassley has led them to believe. Or has led all of the American people to believe. And so I'd really like to see more prosecution on that. The handgun case and Hunter Biden using drugs, I could care less about. But when it comes to corruption and heads of state and their families, colluding with multinational corporations. That's the corruption I'm really interested in them passing some legislation to prevent.
Well, look, I'll throw this out quickly, Jess. If it's your child, what would you do? If it were you, what would you do? We'll have more Rising right after this.